Welcome to the GC Bizcast, a collaboration of J. Whitney Bunting College of Business and Technology and the Department of Communication at Georgia College and State University. Here we discuss important topics with today's business leaders and educators. We're excited that you've joined us. The views expressed are the views of the individuals on the program and do not represent the views of Georgia College and State University. So let's get started.
Hello everyone, welcome back to GC Bizcast. My name is Aaliyah.
I'm Savannah.
And I'm Maddie. Today we're super excited because we're joined online by Mr. Mark Bailey. Mr. Bailey is the Director of Information Systems at Theo Kalin.
Yes, Mr. Mark, we're truly honored. We've seen how you're on the IT advisory board and the leadership board for 2 years now, and both you and Theo Kalin have been tremendous supporters and for our college. So it's such a pleasure, honestly, just having you. And even in our networking events, it's awesome to see you here and how involved you are with the college. And we can't wait to dive into your professional journey.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here.
Yes, sir.
So to kick things off, we kind of want to get a bit of insight into your personal journey. What kind of inspired you to pursue a career in IT and then eventually become a leader in the field?
Well, my story is a little unusual because I didn't take the conventional path. I was actually steered toward IT when I was in high school by a student counselor, and I visited a few schools, and I considered a career in computer engineering. It was called computer engineering at the time instead of computer science, and for several reasons. And one was cost. I was concerned about the burden that it would put on my mother. I decided to start down a different career path. And so anyway, I was in business for myself for a number of years. I founded a company when I was 26 years old. And I realized very quickly that I needed computer technology to be competitive, and because of the business model, it was a deep discount model, which was very new to that industry at the time. And so I brought in a lot of consultants, and I realized that I didn't understand what they were saying. So I decided to start learning myself, and I did a lot of self-learning. And actually, through that process, I developed a love for technology, and I exited the business in my late 20s and went to work for a multi-billion-dollar company as a consultant. And then less than a year later, they offered a full-time position to me, and I was fortunate enough to be able to continue growing with that company and leading projects and things like that. But all along, I realized that I was still missing a lot of the fundamentals from the education that I had avoided. And so I had gone to Georgia College. I actually went to Georgia College at a very young age. I graduated early from high school. And then I had to finish my degree online because back in those days, Georgia College's IT program wasn't, I would have had to have taken a lot of classes on site. And I couldn't afford to do that for time. And so I finished online, and then I went back later and I completed my MBA. And so, my course was a little bit harder than most. So that is one reason, by the way, that I'm so involved with Georgia College, because it's such a great school and has such a great program that, I want to do everything I can to encourage students like you to, finish your degree, and it'll put you so much further ahead than someone who claims that they're self-taught. That was a very naive phrase that I used to use. And so that's kind of how it led me over to technology. But ever since I moved into technology, of course, I've loved it. So.
That's so awesome. We did see that you've had quite the educational journey from going from Georgia College to Georgia Tech all the way to Beijing and then back to Georgia Tech. So we were kind of curious about how that all came to be and how that kind of affected your whole career. Sure.
So, when I finished my bachelor's degree, I was actually, I think, 46 years old. And I was leading projects here at Theo, and I was over IT at that point, or information services is the name that we use here. And So when I decided to go back and get my MBA and I went to Georgia Tech, the internship with or the residency with China was actually part of their international program. But I have, along the way, you'll see on my LinkedIn profile that I've gotten a lot of certifications and I've tried to take advantage of education at every opportunity. And that would be one thing that I would encourage young folks like you. It's more than just getting your 4-year degree. You need to stay involved and you need to be a lifelong learner. I had an uncle who worked for NASA during the Apollo days. And I remember he was a lifelong learner and he went to college into his 70s and he had multiple degrees. He had all kinds of degrees. But he stressed that to me. And when I was young, I couldn't quite understand what he was trying to explain to me. But as I've gotten older, I realized that, that lifelong learning is so important. Not only does it help you keep your mind young, but it keeps you engaged and it keeps you relevant.
Absolutely. That kind of leads me into the next thing I wanted to ask. I was curious about your career at TheoKalin. It seemed like you were there for over 2 decades, which is incredible. But I'm sure throughout that time, you've seen a lot of change when it comes to technology. But I wanted to hear about what your role was and how you were able to lead any sort of transformation when it comes to that change change is inevitable. So I want to hear your side and how you helped to lead that transformation.
Savannah, that's a great question. So, yes, I've been here at Theo for almost 25 years. And before I came over to Theo, I worked primarily in infrastructure, so network administration, those kind of things. And I was really a problem solver, a troubleshooter. I would lead teams across the United States and Europe and lead projects. And then it got to a point later in my career where I would lead teams in and teach them how to problem solve and solve any kind of problem. You walk in and the business is impacted by computer system failures and things like that, and we would go in and try to address those problems. So when I came over to Theo, the primary reason I came to Theo was because the company that I worked for was planning to move me either to north of Atlanta to the Alpharetta area or over to Cornwall, England, and I wanted to stay in Middle Georgia. And I knew that Theo was headquartered here in Middle Georgia, and I heard about some opportunities. So I spoke with the head of IT at the time, and so anyway, they gave me a great opportunity to come over and transition from infrastructure over to development as a systems analyst. And I saw that as an opportunity. Theo had just formed his information services department at that time, and they were just consolidating their network and building out the data center and putting in some great enterprise systems here. And so I was excited about that, and I knew that I would be getting in at a very early stage where I could help them develop their IT program. And so we have seen a lot of change, and I've implemented a lot of policies here that I feel like those have directly impacted our group and the organization in a very positive manner. We've seen sweeping change with products like Microsoft and the introduction of Active Directory and things like that. We implemented voice over IP. We were one of the first manufacturing firms in Georgia to implement voice over IP, and we were the first Cisco customer in Georgia manufacturing based that implemented voice over IP. So, a lot of great, exciting technologies, and we're getting into some more right now that are really exciting as well. That I'm happy to speak about too. But I've really pushed hard for change. And when you walk in the front door, you'll see a visitor vendor registration system that I developed when I was a systems analyst here over 20-something years ago. But from that entry point all the way through our manufacturing plant or plants and all of our offices, you'll see our technology and the great things that my team have developed here over the years. I've got an outstanding team of developers and infrastructure folks who work very closely together. and everybody has the same attitude. We want to improve the business.
That's so awesome. I know, especially one thing to be successful like that, you have to be able to recognize those problems and opportunities to improve. Like, there's no way that you're going to be able to sustain a growing company if you're not actively looking for more places to improve and to be more efficient. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yes. By the way, you all, I do have a tidbit that I would love to share about project management. So I will tell you this, a lot of people, when they go into project management, I've studied the PMBOK and, studied PMI, standards. And I will say that the number one issue that I've seen throughout my career with change and with large enterprise project implementation, it boils down to one thing. It's not the technology, and it's not necessarily the cost, because usually all of that is approved up front. What it generally comes down to is the people, the acceptance. And if someone says, I don't see that big, large green button that you're describing in the top right corner of the screen, if they say that, then it may as well not exist. So, you have to be very cognizant of the team members, the organization's acceptance of the idea and the project, because many times I've gone into these large projects and someone may be fearful that either they're not going to be able to do the new task, or that the task may eliminate what they normally do and have a passion for. And so you have to make sure that you address those fears and everybody's pulling in the same direction. So anyway, I just wanted to share that, because I think a lot of people look at it from a very high level, checking the boxes, and it gets a little deeper into the human psychology than that.
Yeah, like I've worked on so many projects and we have this task, and no one ever really tells you that, hey, there may be people who aren't on board with this. You just need it's just kind of like a this, and this, but that aspect, sometimes it's never factored in. So that's very true, that the people really are a huge deciding factor in whether the project can be successful or not.
Yes, absolutely.
And also, kind of on that topic of change, we've seen the rise of AI and all of that recently. And that you have had various roles in IT. I was kind of just wondering, like, how you see that future of information services evolving with AI.
So that's a very interesting thing, and I love AI, and I will say that, the recent adoption of AI, because AI, as you know, AI and machine learning and things like that have actually been around for a number of years. And it was ChatGPT that really brought it to the forefront. Even though for someone older like me, I remember when IBM came out with Watson, and that was exciting, and everybody started, really focusing on AI at that time. But as far as, I think it's going to impact our lives in everything we do. I'm already starting to see a lot of benefits from AI. For example, a lot of people use a product, Grammarly, to help them with their writing, and it's been around for some time. Those kind of things that are aiding us in what we do and making us more productive and more efficient. I think we're just going to continue seeing that growth. I lead the Thiel cybersecurity team. So, we're looking for ways that we can leverage AI to help, better protect our systems. And, we are also looking for ways that we can identify things that give us a competitive advantage. How can we take a little piece of information out there and then analyze it and make a good business decision very quickly about our strategy, and help us pivot if we need to, or things like that, or help us just identify different changes in the industry that we need to address. So, there are just so many different possibilities right now with AI, and it's an exciting time. I was recently asked to join a council for the Georgia Association of Manufacturers, so on a newly formed AI and Innovation Council. And the things that we're talking about, from education to case studies to policy, we're hoping to align with the National Association of Manufacturers, because we know that there are going to be a lot of policies developed regarding AI. And, we're hoping to help frame some of that up.
Yeah, so extending on AI and the Georgia Association of Manufacturers, we know that it advocates for manufacturing and innovation specifically in Georgia. How do you see AI being specifically integrated in the manufacturing sector? And also, how do you see it being balanced, being used ethically, and also kind of still protecting jobs in
Sure.
manufacturing?
Okay, so that's a great question, and for many years, a lot of manufacturers have had to, make decisions about automation. I'll give you an example. In our business, we have bagging. We've got bagging operations where we bag the kale and ship it out. And so a lot of businesses make a decision between whether they're going to automate and, invest capital in machinery to do certain tasks, or whether they're going to have individuals doing that. And I think that, as AI continues to evolve, companies are finding, ways to automate and become more efficient. It does become a question, at what point do you make that decision? Because you need people in these businesses, at some point, even, AI and computer operated equipment, you have to have someone there. And so I think what we're going to see, and what I hope that we will see, is instead of a displacement of jobs across the board, what we'll see is we'll see people moving on to more value added activities and more, jobs that are more meaningful for them, instead of some of these jobs that can be automated and, moved to machinery. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm very optimistic and hopeful that our society will be lifted up as a whole, and we'll see a lot of the jobs that some people just frankly don't want to do being automated. And then hopefully, those people will become more skilled. The people that are displaced by that, they'll move to more skilled jobs and have more meaningful careers.
Yeah, and to extend on that, we'll probably have jobs we've never even heard of before. So people may be scared now, but I think that it'll all work out in the future. I'm sure people were scared when the internet came, when all these other new inventions came. So I definitely agree with you on that.
Oh, yes. And I can even provide examples, during my career where I've actually worked side by side with people as I was developing a product, and they would say, this is gonna eliminate my job. What am I going to do then? I've actually had people tell me that, and I've tried to explain to them that no, it's going to eliminate, this part of your daily routine, but you will be able to focus on more value added activities. And that's actually what did occur. I mean, one of those was a program that I developed that was like a document management system where people were getting up and they were going and making copies, and then they'd go over and they would hand something off and go back and then scan it. And, so we did all of that electronically. And what it allowed them to do then was instead they were able to use their time for other things that were more important for the business. And they actually became much happier because instead of just walking back and forth, scanning and copying documents and getting them signed and that kind of thing, they moved on to more analytical roles. And so I was very proud of that.
That's awesome. And Mr. Mark, as someone who's risen to a leadership role, we'd love to hear more about your leadership style specifically. Like if you'd like to share a personal or a professional story of how your experience has shaped how you lead today.
Absolutely. Well, I've got a lot of stories, and I'll try to keep this very brief, and I'll try to articulate on one point. So when I first entered technology, I was gung-ho. I was very eager. I was traveling and working extremely long hours. I was a pace setter. I was I was just working just crazy hours. And I remember one of my managers came in one evening. He was actually from Atlanta and he had traveled to Sandersville. And he caught me working late and he kind of scolded me. And he said, if you burn out here, he said, you're not going to be any good to me in a time of crisis. And those words were so true because as I realized and as I got older and hopefully a little wiser, I started realizing that you can actually, work these teams until, everybody is at a point where they're not thinking clearly. And, so I would say that as far as my leadership style is concerned, we are very ambitious and we do stay on task and we try to complete our projects on time. However, you've got to find a good balance. There's got to be a good work-life balance. And you need time to recharge your batteries. You need, so to speak, you need time, downtime, and you need to have time to spend with your family and friends and enjoy the important things of life, because there's so much more than just working all the time. We love technology, but you don't need to be consumed by that and, just pull right into it. So I would say as a leader these days, I try to balance, the true goals and objectives that we're trying to accomplish for the business because we are stewards of the business and we try to make sure that we're constantly improving and serving the business. But on the other hand, we've got a family here that we've got to take care of. And so, we just try to find a good way to balance that. So we're happy, productive, working well together. And when we do that, we're actually, in my personal opinion, outperforming other teams that are just really, working long hours.
Yes, and I feel like we've seen that in other companies. I think the one that comes to mind is Chick-fil-A. They take every Sunday off, and their service, their customer service is beyond any other. And you can really see how they put their workers first and how that affects their business outcome overall.
Yes, that's a great example, Savannah. You're absolutely right. And I'll tell you, this is so true. Even my manager today, we have a weekly meeting. And in our weekly meeting today, we were talking about this, and he was actually, reminding me of the things that I try to instill in others, that we need to make sure that we're taking care. If there are problems that are causing call outs or causing us to work outside of normal business hours, we need to address those and make sure that we're not hurting anybody.
Mm-hmm. And to kind of extend on the leadership topic, we know you've been at Thiel for over 20 years, and as specifically being in the tech field, it's very dynamic. There's always new stuff happening, new stuff coming out. So how has the new emerging technologies, the constant changes, kind of affected your leadership style or your leadership skills? And also, how do you see it kind of affecting it in the future?
Okay, so, I would say it's probably been the change in our end users mostly. So we've had all this new technology coming in, right? And so 25 years ago, the typical IT person, especially on the infrastructure side, they were solving these pretty simple problems that, people would call and they'd say, hey, I've got a problem, and it might take a computer reboot to solve the problem. And then over time, as more and more technology started entering the organization, we saw, and of course, newer, younger employees entering the organization, we saw an adoption of technology with our end users. And so our end users became more technically savvy. And so, I would say that that's probably been the biggest thing that's affected my leadership style because 25 years ago, we were looked to as advisors, and I always wanted us to be partners. And so, 25 years ago, we had several departments, several functional areas that would say, just tell us what to do. Just, IT figure it out, just tell us what to do. And as we've emerged, now we've truly become a business partner. And so, we get a lot of great ideas from business. The business tells us their needs. A lot of times the business will make recommendations for the systems that they want, the software and things like that. Now, controlling that, making sure that you have standards that are set. In other words, like if you're using some type of collaboration system, and it's already adopted and you've got a contract on it, you can't bring in a competitive product and stand it up side by side because of the cost, right? So, we have to manage a lot of that. But the main thing is we have to make sure that the business understands, again, that we're stewards of the business. And so we're hearing what they say. We have to be active listeners, hear what they say, and then we try to make good recommendations, and we take their recommendations, and then we combine those, and we finally make business decisions.
What advice would you give to younger people? I know you mentioned that you started to see younger people coming into the industry. What advice would you give someone entering during this time? Like, there's so much stuff you can do, but at the same time, it's good that we have a lot of options, but it can also be really scary choosing one thing since there's so many things you can do.
Sure.
So what advice? Sorry.
I'm sorry. I think I may have cut you off. What was the?
Oh, no, I was just asking what advice would you offer?
So, the first thing I would say is always stay true and be honest, because as a trusted partner of the business, and IT is very powerful. IT has a lot of access to things, in different areas. So the business has to have a great trust in the person. So first and foremost, be very honest and, try to make sure that you keep things real. But then, as you're looking at your career, because there are so many different, it's like a buffet now. You walk in and there are just so many different specializations, and you can do a lot of different things. And sometimes you may not know exactly what you want to focus on or specialize in when you first go into your career. So I would say, to make sure that as you're looking at potential employment opportunities, you look for opportunities to grow, to pivot, to change direction. Because you look at me, and I started out as a consultant, went into infrastructure, became a systems analyst. Now I'm in management. And all along the way, I was given opportunities to make those changes, which have kept me happy throughout the years, in technology. So I think that's the biggest advice I would give. It's more than just it's to me, for my career, it was more than just the salary and the benefits. Always, there was something more personal about my job decisions or my career decisions. And I would say that you really need to do that, because you can find a job, you can find a company that will offer you a really good salary, and then they'll put you in, they'll pigeonhole you in one thing, and you may not be happy there. So, and I will also say it depends on the person too, because some people don't mind just sitting in a corner and coding all day long and just being left alone, and just coding. So a lot of that is an individual preference.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing, especially I think your journey really emphasizes that idea of lifelong learning. But even with what you said about being happy, I think that's something I know people know it's important, but it's not something you realize is super important until you're in the experience where you don't feel happy. So I think that is something that isn't emphasized often, but is very important.
Yeah.
That's right.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I did not mean to cut you off.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, just even going off of that, I feel like when workers feel like they have a purpose, or when they're driven towards a shared goal, their happiness altogether is just better. And I feel like you've just shown how that you've embodied that and have encouraged that and shown workers their purpose. And I also have this may be just a general question, but this can be advice when it comes to anything, but what is the biggest and most important piece of advice you have ever received?
Oh, goodness.
I know it's like a loaded question.
It is, because I've gotten so much good advice over the years. I've I've had such great mentors. So I'm trying to think, what was the best piece of advice that anyone has ever given me. You know, um, I would say, I have to give credit to my mother. I think because my mother, she went to college for a while, and she stopped going to college and was working. And my father died when I was a baby, and so she went back and finished her degree at Georgia College. By the way, she graduated in 1968.
Wow.
And I think the best information or the best tip that she ever gave me was to take a moment and think about things before you act. I think that that was probably the biggest piece of advice because I'm a little impulsive myself, and my mother she got a degree in psychology. And so she understood a little bit about human behavior and those kind of things. And so I think that we can all benefit from taking a moment, taking a few deep breaths before we actually react to something, whether it's good or bad, and just take a moment to process it before you actually do anything. And that's true in technology too, because we've got some systems here where people are directly interfacing with the systems, and they can issue a command that can cause severe damage to databases and things like that. So sometimes it's better just to take a moment and reflect and then take action.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, Mr. Mark. It's been an incredible conversation, and we're so sure that our listeners have learned a lot from your experiences. Yes, thank you so much. We can't wait to see what happens in the future for Theo and the new innovations that you come up with, and we really look forward to seeing that.
This has been so much fun, and I can't wait to see what you do with your careers. I mean, I hope that that I can kind of follow what you do, and I'm so excited for you. And if I can do anything to help you, please reach out to me.
Thank you. We're so thankful that you did this, and you've been an awesome first guest for me and Savannah. This is our first time.
Yes.
Well, it is certainly my privilege, and it's an honor for me. So thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Yes.
Thank you.
To all our listeners, we hope you enjoyed today's episode and stay tuned for more inspiring stories on GC Bizcast.